As a business person, I think it's good to encourage the next generation to follow their passion, to follow what they believe in, and follow what they're inspired to do. That way they'll be more successful in what they do. A big thing that happened in my life that made me think outside of the box was when I became a foster parent and started caring for these babies who were withdrawing from drug exposure. And I saw a gap in services and felt a bigger calling to do something more, and had to think, what can we do as a community to come together? And that's how Bridget's Path was formed. So one cause I believe in strongly is families. And as a foster parent, seeing the babies that needed strong families, I latched on to the idea of how can I rebuild families through creating Bridget's Path. And so that's what I'm doing right now in my life to help the bigger problem that we're having in our community.
What would I do if I was going to start fresh? I think I would always trust my gut instinct. I would never lose my passion and my excitement. So I've been reading a book called Your Next 24 Hours by Hal Donaldson. But it talks about random acts of kindness that impact a community in a big way. And so I really feel like that's the ability to be able to take those acts of kindness that you don't think about and just implement them into your everyday life. What is the bravest thing I've ever done? Well, I guess it probably goes back to a lesson learned that I learned when I was in 5th grade. And it was blizzard of 78. And I really wanted to go outside. I wanted to play in the blizzard. And so I finally convinced my dad that I was going to go out. But what he taught me was, he took a rope and tied it around my waist. Then he took that same rope and tied it around his. And we were going to go out and we were going to be brave together. But that people need lifelines. So my lesson was really to understand that I could either be that lifeline or I could ask for a lifeline. And being brave means asking for that lifeline.
My favorite quote is by Mary Oliver, an American poet, and it's, "What are you going to do with your one wild and precious life?" People don't know that I am pretty terrified of speaking in front of groups. And it's interesting because for the 7 years that I was publisher at Dayton Business Journal, I knew I had to do that as part of my job. And for the first year, I was really terrified every time I went on stage. And in time, I got used to it, but it's a tough spot for me. I'm actually already doing some things to reach greater heights and change my life. The most recent job change that I had was marrying activism and my publishing life in the new role that I have with Prism magazine.
What people don't know about me is that I'm really a shy person. I would prefer to stay home with my husband, read a book, cuddle. When I'm passionate about something, I will focus and become extroverted. If I had achieved everything that I needed to achieve and financially I was able to do whatever I wanted to do, I'd probably figure out a way to help women with young children or children in general. I have a soft spot for kids and mothers, and so my mission would be to try to help lift them, teach them to fish. I think it's important that women understand that they're stronger than they are, and that there's a big responsibility with a child. You know, you're forging someone out into this scary new world, and so I'd like to be able to be positively and impactful. For most people, the bravest thing is just really letting go. I have a child with a heart problem, and he is 29, and he wasn't supposed to live past 26. So letting him go and just trusting that he could be his own person was probably the hardest thing for me. So being a mother, you want to fix and protect everything, and I think the worst thing you can do is fix and protect everything.
So the first habit that I have developed, which I do each and every day, is to make sure that I get off to a good start in the morning. And so that includes things like a fresh cup of coffee, spending time listening to the news, and just making sure that I am wherever I need to be on time. So that's the first habit that I've developed. And the second habit is probably closing out the day at work. Generally, after a very busy day, I try and make sure that I've answered all my phone calls. I have responded to emergency emails and just tried to close things out so that by the time I go home, I can focus on my personal life and spend time with my family. I have been impacted by a fresh start. And probably the most monumental fresh start for me occurred back in 2000. At that point in time, I held an administrative position in a pediatric hospital. And I decided to make the leap to an executive level position in an adult care facility. What I came to realize very quickly was that the cultures were very different, and that caring for pediatric patients was not just caring for little adults, and that the adult healthcare world was a very competitive environment to be in. So I learned a lot from that fresh start, and it certainly has helped me to be a much stronger executive in the healthcare arena. Our young employees give me a really fresh perspective. I've committed as a leader to identify who I think are potential leaders and look for opportunities for our young employees. And what I've learned by doing that is that as I teach them about leadership, they teach me about a new perspective. And so I have truly embraced that as part of my leadership style.
A fresh start has impacted my life in many ways. When I became the mayor of the city of Trotwood, it was an absolute fresh new start for my city and my community. I served over 13 years on the city council, and to become the actual leader of the city really gave me the opportunity to share my vision and what I saw as a great opportunity for our community. If I had a magic wand and I could change one thing about Trotwood, Ohio, it would be that everyone in the city could see the Trotwood that I see, that they could envision the opportunities that are there in our community, that they could celebrate the diversity of our community, and that they could actually know Trotwood to be the great community that I know it is. The guiding principle of my life is to treat people the way I'd like to be treated, to do unto other as you have done unto yourself. I think it's important in these days and times when we typically think of just getting ours, that we get back to the thought of the we. You know, it's important that, you know, as you prosper, I prosper, and as I see you go up, I go up. And that's something that I think is extremely important, and it really has added value to the work that I do in making sure that it's always a win-win.
What is one thing I could do to impact a cause I believe in? I would actually say that there's a lot of things I already do. My husband and I aren't financially well off, so we give what we can, but the thing that I'm very rich in is time, passion, and enthusiasm. So I sit on a lot of boards, I volunteer a lot, and I chair a lot of events, and that way I'm able to give back to a lot of the causes that I feel very passionately about. If I were going to make a fresh start, I think I would go back and I would teach. I believe that arts and education is really important, and it sounds incredibly cheesy, but children are the future of our society, and it's been really sad to see what's happened in education since I grew up. So I think that I would rather go back and make a positive influence on our future. A favorite quote I live by, for the longest time it was "Stop doubting and believe," my favorite Bible verse. And whenever I would get very worked up, that was my go-to, which is all the time. I'm usually a very worked up person. But 2 years ago when my daughter was 3, she said, "Mommy, hold my hand, now think about your life." And it was the most powerful moment in my entire life. And so now when I get really worked up, I take a deep breath and I think about my life and what's really important. So very powerful words from a very, very young woman.
Well, I read a book recently, and it's actually a pretty well-known book. It's Stephen Covey's 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. And one habit that really stood out to me was the second habit, which was to begin with the end in mind. And so when you think about that, it's a little morbid, but you think about the end of your life and really what you want your life to represent. And everything you do in life should really lead up to that. And so my advice for somebody who is embarking on a fresh start in life would be to really think about that end, and as long as that is leading up to that end. One thing that people don't know about me is that I really didn't realize my true potential until I was in college. In high school, I was an average student. I got B's and C's, and I can remember very vividly taking one of those college entrance exams and getting the scores back. And I remember the description saying that I was going to be a C student in college, and actually the exact opposite happened. I worked very hard in college. I ended up graduating cum laude. I graduated with an honors degree, and I had to take extra courses and advanced placement courses to get that degree. I worked really hard for it, pulled a lot of all-nighters, and I think it was really going through that hard point in my life that I was able to really realize my full potential, and that really kind of gave me a springboard into my life and what I know I'm able to do. When I became the president of Prime Controls, I had always thought that I do not want to be the limiting factor to that company. And so for the last year, I've really been giving it a lot of thought about going back to school and getting my doctorate in strategic leadership. And the difference between a PhD and a doctorate degree is a PhD is someone who goes out and researches and they set new strategy, whereas a doctorate is more of an applied degree where you can take what has already been put out in research and really apply it in your field. And so, you know, I've been really giving that a lot of thought. And so that would be a huge change in my life. It would be something that I would have to do while also running the company and also raising 3 young kids.
If someone is embarking on a fresh start in their lives, I would first ask them to just kind of evaluate where they've been, list the things that they want, and create a plan to get to the point where they are wanting to achieve. Fresh starts are really cool, and sometimes they're needed, but when we're having a fresh start, I think it's important for us to really reflect on where we've been, whether they're mistakes, things that we've celebrated, and really kind of use that information to help you grow. 2 things that I do, successful habits that I do every day. I try to wake up happy and thankful. So I always wake up with just a sense of gratitude. If nothing else, just to be waking up. And then I listen to cool music. So I start every day out with Bill Weathers' Lovely Day, because that is such a wonderful way to celebrate the day and what's going to happen. I like to thank Tiffany Ray Bozeman for giving me a fresh perspective. I always seen my life as being in business, being a business owner, and she really helped shape my career as an educator. She encouraged me to pursue my license to teach mathematics in high school. That led to a professorship at Sinclair Community College. So it really changed my life.
As a current businesswoman, we think a lot about how are we going to inspire, recruit, attract, kind of who are our next business leaders. I think the first and foremost is you have to be a strong role model in what you currently are doing. You have to recognize that people are watching without you ever really knowing that they're watching. I've always tended to believe that the best way to lead is to lead by example. I think women need to spend a great deal of time fostering and embracing each other and supporting each other, and looking for opportunities to build the next true leaders. The person who's probably given me the freshest perspective is probably a multitude of people. And I say that, my mentor originally was the person who hired me in my current role, which was Toni Dosick. She's a woman of the 60s who was probably this rare, strong advocate for people, for women, and really kind of saw something in me that I probably never even saw myself. And that was, I have the ability to be a strong, confident woman, a strong, confident leader, and had more confidence and trust in me than I did myself, and brought that out. Since then, I continue to be driven, motivated by the other women in my life that I've kind of brought along that make me want to be better and make me want to do creative, innovative things. I have an amazing group of coworkers that I've had an opportunity to work with for close to 20 years that every day push me to be better. And I look around and it's women who just share kind of the same passion for everything.
There are a lot of people who have inspired me personally and professionally, but someone in particular I think that is inspiring me right now, which comes to the forefront, is Kate Schindel. And she's the president of Actors Equity Association. And she's had a really diverse career. She started out in pageants and used her talents of singing and acting in that realm. And then she moved into performing professionally. She was on Broadway, and then she moved into producing, and now she's the president of our union. And she just really makes bold claims about artists and how we should be treated. We should be treated fairly, that women and men should be paid equally on stage. She's very outspoken about our artistry, and she just inspires me every day with fighting for us and to be treated equally. One thing that people don't know about me is that I spent most of my middle school and high school years being a synchronized swimmer. I was on a synchronized swimming team in Greenville, South Carolina, and I kind of transitioned from swimming, as a kid on a summer team in my neighborhood, but I was looking for something else. I really wanted, I guess, that performative quality, and someone introduced me to synchronized swimming, and so I joined a team and just absolutely loved it. I was so passionate about it, and we ended up, our trio went to Junior Olympics my senior year and competed down in Florida. It was so much fun. If I was just to make a bold move, I think what I'd want to do is go back and get my master's, specifically in women's studies and theater performance, so that I could continue to pursue the ideas around gender parity and the arts. Is something that I'm just very passionate about, and I would love to have that in-depth knowledge so that we could deepen that fight.
My career, I get to meet a lot of people, a lot of educators and administrators, and I think the most fresh perspective that I've had over the last 11 years have been my own children. I see things so differently through their eyes now as an educator of what they enjoy in their own educational career, what they don't like, and then that leads me to try to discover new ways to work with the educators that I get a chance to work with because of their influence on me. If I could make a fresh start, to be perfectly honest, I think I would go back to my roots and back in the beginning. I would actually go back in the classroom. I've had a chance to be away from the classroom for a while as an administrator and look at things through different eyes, and I think I would like to go back and try those strategies on the students. I miss the aha moments. My favorite quote that I live by isn't necessarily a quote, but it's words that my parents have constantly told me throughout my life, and that's be brave and dance. Be brave to stand up for what is right, and don't be afraid to speak your mind and speak your voice, and always kind of step outside the box and help others who might be outside the box as well. And then my mom always reminded me to not forget to dance. She said life is going to be challenging and you're always going to face difficulties, but if you just pause for a moment and remember to dance, then it brings a smile to your face and it makes all the difficulties just seem to disappear, even if it's just for a brief period of time.
I think if I were able to make big changes in my life, one thing I've always aspired to or always looked at others in wonder about is the ability to get up early in the morning. Honestly, I hear people say, oh, you know, those people who get up in the mornings are so much more productive and they get all these things done before 9 o'clock in the morning. I've never in my life been an early morning person. I hit my stride in late afternoon to early evening, but early mornings have evaded me without massive amounts of caffeine and very strong alarm clocks. Most recent bravest things I've done that I'm proudest of is changing careers from 12 years in communications and public relations, of which I got my advanced certification, changing from that and going into website project management and soon to be product management, actually. So I'm super excited about that. It's been a really intense process, but because it dealt with a lot of technical aspects and technical information that I hadn't known before. And so every day is a constant learning experience. So every day is a little, is both educational and thrilling all at once, and I love it. The advice I would give to someone who is embarking on a fresh start in their lives is to be afraid and do it anyway. There is a lot of opportunity out there, and sometimes I think, especially as women, we tend to stick to what's safe and maybe not take those chances, especially as you get older. And I found starting over with a new career in my 40s is something that, you know, not everybody is willing to take that leap, but I knew that that was the best direction for me, and it was really scary at the time to jump into something that was a lot of unfamiliar, but I couldn't be more thrilled with what I'm doing right now, and I love it. And I'm so glad that I just went ahead and told myself I could do it, no matter what. Even sometimes when I was a little bit, you know, you have those voices that say, I don't know, maybe, you know, I don't have the skills or the chops for this.
The bravest thing I've ever done is to be with my father toward the end of his life. He was there surrounded by all of our immediate and extended family. It was probably the most challenging thing that I've ever done, and the bravest thing I've ever done, but I'm glad I had the opportunity to be there with him at the very end. The one thing people don't know about me is that I'm an avid basketball fan. I enjoy the WNBA, the NBA. I like going to games, and I watch and record them on a regular basis. If I were to make big changes in my life and reach greater heights, what I would do is make sure that I was financially set. And I've been motivated by a gentleman that I met several years ago to give away 90% of what I made and live on 10% so that I could help other people in need. You hear about people, especially in the United States, that don't have the basics like food, water, refrigerator, stoves. So I would take my resources and work with those in our community to give back.
If I had a magic wand and could change one thing about Dayton, Ohio, I would tell ourselves to be a little bit less hard on ourselves. I think one of the reasons that as a non-native Daytonian I get along so well with the city is because we are both overachievers and we are both a little bit of perfectionists. And I think that when you have those tendencies, you tend to want to fix all the things and focus on the things that you haven't done and the things that you have yet to accomplish, instead of taking a moment to say, look how far we've come and look at everything we have done together as a community. And I think that there are so many other places and other cities and other communities that get so paralyzed by the fear of admitting that they have challenges. And what we do really well is entering into that dialogue and that discussion and say, you know what, we do have challenges, we do have things that need to be worked on, we do have pieces that are broken, but we're going to fix those together. If I were talking to someone who was embarking on a fresh start in their lives, one of the things I would tell them, I have a plaque in my office and it reads, follow your heart, but take your brain with you. And that's something that I love, just because anytime we start something new or we find a new passion project, one of the first things that carries us is that adrenaline and that enthusiasm. And then we usually hit a wall and we fall flat because we say, what now? What next? And then we don't know where to go from there. And then it feels like you had all that passion, but you didn't know what to do with it. And so I think that you want to do something that is going to carry you on the enthusiasm side, but take a few minutes to just plan and be intentional and really think out those next steps, and you'll go 10 times farther. I think, if nothing else, two things that I do each and every day are hug my children and eat chocolate, because there's not a whole lot that can ruin your day after you have hugged small children and found some candy somewhere.
A fresh start in my career has been when I started medicine. I was a nurse. I worked in critical care medicine in the adult world. And I knew when I finished my bachelor's in nursing that I would want to pursue another degree. I just was unclear which degree that would be. So as I considered all my options and knowing my personality and wanting more of an independent type practice, I pursued medicine. So I don't know if I would consider it a fresh start, as more of a continuum. Nursing was a very strong foundation to my medical career, and I believe I'm a better physician because of my nursing background. A new fresh start for me actually is, I'm embarking on it right now. I will be actually joining a state-of-the-art innovative hospital in the country of Qatar as a pediatric intensivist. It's a 550-bed women and children's hospital, and I will be working with physicians and practitioners from all over the world. And so it's an innovative way of thinking, it's a new perspective on things, so I'm very excited at this point in time in my career, almost 2 decades after I graduated from med school, to learn some new ways of managing patients and maybe bringing that talent back to the US. A favorite quote I live by is by the Lebanese poet and writer Khalil Gibran, and it states, "The smallest act of kindness is worth more than the greatest intention." And it kind of ties into another quote that I love by Maya Angelou, which is, and I'm paraphrasing, "People may not know what you did or may not know what you say, but they'll always remember how you made them feel." And so I teach my children this. I tell them, you don't have to be friends with everyone at school, but you have to be kind. And I practice this in medicine, and I hope I show compassion to my patients and to their families. And I hope that that's how I'm perceived in my day-to-day life, being kind and compassionate no matter what the circumstance is.
The bravest thing that I've ever done, I'd have to say, is when I was around 30, I decided to go back to school and actually decided to go to law school. Kind of push aside my fears. I was a working mom at the time, had a pretty good job, but really wanted to elevate what I was doing in the community. And with the help of my husband, who changed his career, we uprooted our family. I went to law school, and it was a life-changing experience. Well, if I was talking to someone who was embarking on a fresh new start, sometimes it's we're doing it voluntarily, sometimes not so voluntarily. So I would tell them embrace the change and create a plan. Really, that allows someone to get that sense of control that maybe they've lost in the process, or they've been able to create a plan so that they can move towards whatever their goal is. But most importantly, probably what I would say is really lean on your support systems, both personal support systems, your family, your friends, but also on your professional support systems. And hopefully you've created a network professionally so that those people can help you move towards getting the outcome you want. Typically how I start my day and the practices that I use to keep myself on track is I'll create a list, but that list will only include my non-negotiables for that day. So I try to minimize the list. But secondarily to that, what I do is I've learned to delegate. In the position I'm in, I have to think not just what can I get done that day, but what can others get done for the agency. And it really helps keep me level-headed so that I'm not trying to micromanage people. But it really allows my staff to take on more responsibilities, to learn, and to really create a relationship of trust between myself and the people that I rely on.
If I was giving someone advice about starting fresh in their life, I would tell them to make sure they have an open mind and never be afraid to take a chance, because sometimes those chances are what make things perfect. Two practices that I have each day are, one is I try to always start the day on a positive note. I feel like if you do that, the tone you have in the morning is how you're going to react to things throughout the day. And also to make sure that I'm supportive to those around me and try to offer them help when needed. The person that always gives me a fresh perspective when it's related to work would be Stacy Schwaghart. No matter what the situation, she always has views on how things could be changed or made better, and she's always thinking in a different way than I am, and it helps me to make decisions and feel better about the things that are happening.
What is the bravest thing I've ever done? That's a tough one. I mean, I can think of packing my bags after being accepted to an American university at the age of 18 and getting on a jumbo jet and coming over to this foreign land, so far away from home. But I think probably what gets the prize is the birth of my third child. I gave birth to her all by myself in the backseat of a police car, with two policemen driving in the front in sheer panic. And she and I looked at each other, then she cried, and then I knew we were both going to be okay. I don't think anything can top that experience. I actually always had a desire to speak more languages, and part of it is because I wanted to study in Italy, shoe design. I can see myself having the time of my life in that career, or France, and learning how to elevate my game as a cook, becoming a chef. My favorite quote, if I can call it that, is the realization that every breath, every day is a gift from God above. So live each day as if it's my last, to my very best, make a difference.
I think the bravest thing that I have ever done, because I'm not athletic, is to run a marathon and hike to the bottom of the Grand Canyon. I think that was very courageous of me, and it was sort of out of the box. And I was very pleased with my performance, and I feel really good about that. I think the advice I would give someone if they were embarking on a fresh start in their life is, what would you do if you knew you would never fail? And the reason I say that is, think of the opportunities, the challenges, the things that we've turned down, the worries that we have. And I think every day we're handicapped by fear of failure. Two successful habits and practices that I do every day, and they may sound very simple, are every evening I iron 2 sets of clothes. And the reason I do that is it keeps me grounded with what's happening tomorrow. I'm 2 sets of outfits ahead, And in the morning, I'm ready to go. And it gives me another choice. And then I look at my calendar for the day. I think about who I'm going to meet with. I get my head wrapped around that day, not the week, not the month. And then when I pull out of my driveway and on the way to work, I say 3 positive things out loud. And they may be something as, it's a great day, I'm going to see my grandchildren today. I'm always in a good mood by the time I get to work. And I think in the world of hospice, small and simple is really what matters.
If I were going to make a fresh start and do things over, I would actually become an environmental rights lawyer. I'm really concerned about global climate change and want to do more to protect the environment. So one of my favorite quotes is to forget the mistake and remember the lesson. I'm really all about not necessarily beating yourself up over things that happen, but making sure that I always learn from those mistakes and being able to move on. So something that people do not know about me is that as a kid, I was not allowed to watch very much TV. And as a result of this, all these different pop culture references and 80s culture, I just have absolutely no reference point for it all and feel really lost sometimes.
I would definitely encourage young women coming in a new workforce to develop their source of income by adopting the business of their own. So that way, not only they can create the income sources, but at least they can have control of their time and they can invest their time in their family and children. I think that's more important in current times. Well, that's a very good question to think outside the box because, see, I was more in academic environment. I did my 2 PhDs in biochemistry and zoology, and I did my research in cancer immunology. That was very outstanding research, a lot of publications, a lot of research papers were coming out, and I get a lot of recognition. And also, a lot of people were recognizing me as a scientist. But then I realized in my mind that no matter what, how much research I do, it's not going to go into public because it's more secure. So in that case, I thought maybe I should go out in public and also show my talent into the communities. And based on that, then I decided to do some community work. My one word is a go-getter attitude, and women should be exposed the kind of potential they have, expose themselves in public, so women can have encouragement, not just by themselves, but as also setting an example for other coming generation.
Two practices that I do each and every day. I'm probably going to tell you 3 quickly. I actually get up every single morning about an hour before I go to the gym. So the gym's one of them. Number 2 would be I do my devotions in the morning and then write a gratitude list. So it really helps me, and I actually just did the time, how much time I've been doing a gratitude list. I've done a gratitude list for 4 years every day, and it has seemed to help me stay grounded and to remember what's really important as opposed to the day's activities. The person who's given me a fresh perspective in my professional life has to be a woman named Sheila Mixon. She is the executive director for WiBN locally, and she has a tendency to just do things boldly and brashly. And I look at her, and she has so much respect. And she and I have spent some really good time together, lots of personal time together and professional time together. And she has literally told me to be exactly who I need to be. So when looking at a problem, look at it straight on. The person who has inspired me the most personally and professionally is my mentor, Diana. She has guided me over the last 10 years and taught me how to be authentic, has taught me how to walk through fear, has taught me how to just do it anyway, no matter what. She has listened and taught me how to listen, and she just has literally held my hand throughout the last 10 years. So when I get a problem or a good thing or a bad thing or a different thing, I call her and she will talk me through it. And there's nothing more powerful than having someone be able to listen to you exactly where you're at. You don't have to make it up.
I've realized the older I've gotten, the more I've worked, that it doesn't really matter what the problem is. That idea that somehow I need to or can tackle this alone and solve it and figure it out is, I think, a dangerous thing. I think a lot of women fall into this trap that I need to fix this all myself. And the biggest thing for me in thinking outside the box has been, I can ask for help. I've got all these great people around me in my organization and outside my organization that are willing to step up and help me tackle whatever the issue is. So that's probably been for me the biggest lesson around that whole question, and I think has made me a much better person, a much happier person 10 years down the line. So one thing about Dayton, Ohio that I would change, right off the bat, let me say, we need more women in executive leadership roles. I mean, that's my sort of big wish. I know that's the big wish of this organization and of many organizations around town, but the idea is we get more women in leadership roles and our community continues to change for the better. That aside, I love Dayton, and I think there's so many great things happening. There's so many people doing cool stuff. My husband and I have chosen to settle here, and we talk all the time about how great Dayton is, not just for what's in Dayton, but for what we're close to. And so you can stay here and easily get to Cincinnati and Columbus, but we've got so much already happening in our community. I mean, every evening and weekend there's a full list of things that we have to choose from. And then both of our careers are here, and the idea is we can continue to grow within our careers without having to move anywhere else. And so I'm really, in the 10 years that I've been working at my organization within Dayton, I've seen just incredible changes, and it's really exciting. It's an exciting place to be right now. For me, it's a quote that I came across, I think when I was in college, by Henry Matisse. Someone had it written on their wall or on one of those whiteboards, and the quote is, "There are flowers everywhere for those who want to see them." And so for me, I think the sort of guiding principle is, pay attention. There are good things happening all the time around you. There are good people. There are flowers if you choose to see them. And you know, the idea is we can see lots of different things. And I'm not Pollyanna and pretending that everything is great all the time.
Persistence. Taking the chance, never giving up on my dream. It took some time to get there, but I was persistent and I knew eventually I was going to go for it. Spouses of veterans with disabilities and also parents with children that have disabilities, they inspire me the most. Every day is a struggle. I've witnessed it with some of the children that stay in our home and some of the families. I also deal with it on a daily basis with my husband being a disabled vet. I am so encouraged by these families and spouses because even after the struggle, there is so much encouragement every day, strength, and it doesn't matter the situation, they continue every day, get up and make their families happy, and just the strength that comes from these families and from spouses, it just encourages me to continue. I would encourage upcoming businesswomen to be more involved in their community. Go to the chamber, visit the city, the staff, figure out what programs are available within your city, and definitely I would encourage getting a business that is from the heart, and wake up every morning happy and completely devoted that you followed your dream.